Today, we are going to talk about something that is so near and dear to my heart because it comes up all the time in coaching. And to kick us off, I want this to be, as always, I want this to be super interactive. Hey, everyone, thanks for joining in. Thanks for popping in where you're watching from. Before we get started, here's what I want to ask you. What are some of the areas, and this can be in your personal life or in the salon life, what are some of the areas that distract you and pull your focus that you really don't actually have that much control over? So type into the chat, what are like one or two places that you find that your attention and your focus gets drawn super often that you may not really have a ton of control over? Heather, you're stoked for your vision dryer. Yeah, it's a good dryer. It's super awesome. I know for me, and this might sound a little odd, but for me, one of the places that my focus gets distracted is in world news. And of course, we want to be up to date on the world news, but what I mean by distraction is it can draw my focus so strong that it's hard to focus on something else. So I have to be really cautious with how much attention and how much I'm putting into the news, because it can pull me away from the things that actually really matter. And well, not that actually really matter, but I actually have some level of control over. So Shirley's saying cats in rescue take a lot of focus. Yes. But that you do actually have some control over, Shirley, right? Hi, Tara. Welcome. Hi, Wayne from Jamaica. That's awesome. So yeah, just pop into the chat. What are a few things that for you, whether it's at home or at the salon, what are things that take your focus that you may or may not really have that much control over? So as you're doing that, I want to set up the why behind this. Why are we even talking about this? Because the more that we place our focus into things that we have no control over, the less we have to give to the things that we do, to the things that we have right in front of us that need our attention. I actually just popped in on an Instagram Live just a few minutes ago with my friend Steve Gomez and this group called... oh my gosh, I'm totally spacing the name of the group, but it's an incredible software that actually helps you to fill your books. It's super cool. Liza's saying kids distract a lot. Yeah. So I tuned in, and one of the things that Steve was talking about is that this huge explosion of businesses happen within the salons. I'm sure a lot of you have experienced this, where we're just getting inundated in the salons with new business, and it can be really hard to keep up. And the challenge that he's seeing, because he is a business coach, the challenge he's seeing within the salons that he works with is that people are so focused on just trying to keep up that they're not able to focus on the foundational pieces. Mickey Wright talked about this just a few weeks ago, where it's simple things like customer service and pre-booking and taking time with each client. So the more our focus is taken to these things that are not really serving us or not really helpful, the less attention and less focus we have to be able to deliver to the things that are most important and we do actually have some level of control over. Cindy's saying house duties, making lunch, keeping the house clean. Kelbell's saying family can be pretty distracting. And phone, yes, the stupid phone. And yeah, some things like even family health issues. Thanks for saying that, Kel, because yeah, that's hard, because that could be a distraction and it could be something that you really don't have that much control over, and it's taking your attention away from the things that you do. So thank you so much. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. That's huge. Saying that drugs can be an attention grabber, but you're off it for 2 years now, still going strong, and been doing 6 months now as a student. That's so awesome. So you did change your focus. You did take that step to change your attention. So that's so killer. Great for you. And Shirley saying little family dramas. Yes, again, things that, don't get me wrong, these are vitally important, right? Like, these are things that are important in our life. But the difference is, are they taking so much of your focus, so much of your time, so much of your attention, that we're not putting the attention into the things that we do have control over? Oh, Tony. Yes. Tony's saying getting back orders because everyone's out of stuff. Yes. Supply chain issues, I'm sure, has been a big distraction for many of you that are, especially like salon owners or suite owners. I'm sure that's been a pain in the butt. So today, what we're going to spend a little bit of time with is talking about something called the Franklin Covey Circle of Influence, Circle of Concern. This is one of my all-time favorite things that Franklin Covey has has created over the years. And if you're not familiar with Franklin Covey, it's so easy to find information on it. It's one of the original coaching groups that really developed a lot of what professional coaches do. So definitely check them out. So if you guys are ready, if you're with me, please in the chat, type with me so I know you're ready to jump into this. I'm going to drink a little water. I've spoken a lot today, so the throat's a little dry. Let's start out with this. Before we even touch on the circle of influence and circle of concern, I want to help you understand a couple things about the mind. Yes, Liza's with me. Awesome. Thank you all. Thank you. So one of the laws of the mind is that you can only focus on one thing at a time. How many of you out there, you can just give us a thumbs up, or you can say me, feel like you are really good at multitasking? So how many of you out there feel like you are really awesome at multitasking? Give us a thumbs up, or just type into the chat, I am. So those of you that are giving the thumbs up and typing I am into the chat, I hate to burst your bubble, but you're not great at multitasking necessarily, because the concept of multitasking is trying to do the two things at the same time. What you're actually good at is really quickly changing your focus and changing your attention between two different things, because the mind can quite literally not focus on two things simultaneously. Bet you didn't know that. Or maybe you did. I know there's a lot of people in here. Yeah, Tara, you got it. It's impossible to multitask. So multitasking, it's actually taking our attention and bouncing back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Now, that being said, some of you actually are quite good at this. You're really sharp at being able to bounce back and forth between these two things. But the reason this is so important is that if we understand that if my mind is fully trained on this, it can't be paying attention to that over there at the same time. Make sense? So that's one of the laws that we have to understand. One of the other laws that we really have to understand is that the mind will move us towards what we focus on. Now, not talking about this from kind of a manifestation aspect, which I fully believe in. I know a lot of you do too, because we've had this discussion. So sorry, shake that off. I don't know why, but my mind went to a whole different thought. See, I just proved the mind can only focus on one thing at a time. But the reason I want to bring up the fact that the mind moves us towards what we focus on is because whatever we choose to put our most focus on, we will naturally gravitate towards that through our thoughts and our actions. It's not necessarily just that we will create that through kind of an energetic sense, which I truly believe that we will, but it's also the fact that if my mind is fully trained on this thing over here, it's really hard for me to not go straight to it. My wife, Michelle, and I, we went to this awesome motorcycle training course one time. And in that motorcycle training course, what they taught you, which I thought was absolutely brilliant, is to never train your focus onto the obstacle. Train your focus onto the way around the obstacle. And so what they did in the course is they would set up this piece of wood and then another piece of wood over here. And there was only a small spot that you could get between those two pieces of wood. And they said, do not pay attention to the two pieces of wood. Pay attention to the path between those two things. And absolutely, it worked so well. I actually learned that in a mountain bike training book that I bought one time too, is to focus on the path, not on the obstacle. Kind of cool, right? Because the mind will take us towards what we focus on. The other thing that we really need to understand about the mind is that it wants to prove us correct. So if we have a belief that we are fully focused on, this is what I keep training my thoughts on, this is what I keep training my focus on, the mind wants to prove that that thing that we are so focused on is correct. So every time we draw our focus to those things, we are pulling ourselves more and more towards it. So if we're mainly focused on things that are not supportive to us, if we're mainly focused on things that are not going well or that they're problems, guess what? We don't have much focus left for everything else. We will continue to draw ourselves closer and closer to those things. And so that the subconscious mind proves itself that it's correct, it will create situations so that it will prove that this thing that you keep focusing on is true. Ouch, right? Don't worry, we're going to get to a place where we talk about how not to do this, okay? Yeah, Tara, you like that. Lorraine's liking that too. Awesome. You're with me. Shirley's saying, I cannot split my focus. Things go goofy. And Tony, it's hard not to in the salon. I think you're talking about multitasking. Yes. And it is tough not to multitask for sure. Yes. Sounds familiar. To focus on the problem, not the solution, or not to focus on the problem, focus on the solution. Yes, absolutely. All right, so let's get into this Franklin Covey circle of influence, circle of concern. And of course, I don't know where my markers are. Hold, please. Does anyone else do that? I used to do that at the salon all the time. I would put my clips here sometimes. I'd put my clips on my back pocket. I'd put them on the table. I tend to place stuff everywhere. So thanks for bearing with me. All right, the circle of influence, circle of concern. The reason I love it is because it's so simple. And this is what it looks like. Let's find the center here. So this inside circle is the circle of influence. Oops, I didn't spell influence quite correctly. Here, we'll turn that U into an L. Hey, that was easy, right? Influence. And this outside circle out here is the circle of concern. How many of you out there are familiar with this? Type into the chat if you're familiar with this or if you've seen this before. I've definitely talked about this in the past on Wellness Wednesday before, but type into the chat if you've... Calbell saying, clips be everywhere. Yes, truth. I love it. Oh, man. All right, so here's how this works. The circle of influence in here are the things that we absolutely have control over. We have the ability to do something about these things. So a lot of this is us, right? Our feelings, our perceptions, our actions. All of that lives within this circle of influence. The circle of concern is all of the stuff that we don't really have control over. So let's put this in perspective of a salon experience, right? Let's say you're having a hard time with the owner of the salon or the manager or something like that. You're not really appreciating their energy or their attitude or something like that. Well, if my focus keeps going to, well, that person's doing this and that person's acting this way, that person is blah, 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 where does that live on this circle? If I'm totally focused on what they are doing within the situation. out here, right? Because do I wait, am I talking to you, Tara? Yeah. So I am absolutely talking to you because that's why you showed up today. That is out here. That's the circle of concern. So if all of my focus is out here, guess what? This starts to expand. And when it expands, what does it do to my circle of influence? Oh, it makes it smaller. So the more I focus on those things that I have no control over, the less I actually have control over. Does that make sense? So let's go back to the laws of the mind, because that's the reason this works, right? The mind can only focus on one thing at a time. So if it is focused here, is it focused on what we can do? No, not necessarily. So type into the chat, what are some of the things that you know are in the circle of concern that draw your attention? I know for me, like I said in the beginning, sometimes it's something like world news. And it's like, okay, yes, do I want to be up to date on what is happening in my world? 100%. That's being a good, responsible human, right? Being a good, responsible human means I am aware of what's happening in the world around me. Now, can I personally change what is happening on the other side of the planet from me? No, I don't have the direct ability to change what's happening over there. So I can recognize it, and I can be aware of it, and I can feel deep compassion for that. If it completely occupies my entire mental space, I am here, right? So I can probably visit this space on occasion, but if I stay here, then everything here starts to shift. Here's the good news. Yes, Shirley, the rabbit hole of news. Awesome. The good news about this is it works in the opposite direction just as powerfully. Actually, shift that, not just as powerfully, more powerfully. If I choose to put my attention and my focus here, guess what happens in the other direction? This grows and expands. Because when I'm here, when I start to say, what do I actually have control over? What can I do in this situation? Automatically, without even having to change anything that's existing out here. Let's go back to our example of maybe people you're not getting along with in the salon. You're not seeing eye to eye. Oh, those people are doing this. Those people are doing that. That drives me nuts. Well, I would ask you, start to turn your attention to, well, what do I actually have control over in this situation? And don't get me wrong, I totally understand the experience of people driving you crazy and like you don't agree with that person. And it's hard not to put your focus into that. Totally understand. So don't try to change that. Don't try to put more energy into that. Just bring your attention and your focus into this. What can I actually do in this moment? And here's the thing. It might be something small. It might be something itty bitty and tiny. But what happens is as soon as you start to invest here, oh my gosh, yes, Tara, I love that. Invest your bucks in here, in the circle of influence. Because as soon as you start to put your energy here, it expands. And with more space and expansion, this starts to disappear, and then more starts to happen there where it's like, oh, and now that I've started to put my focus here, I'm seeing more that is within my control. Oh, here's something else that's in my control. Here's something else. Here's something else. Good, Miss Hall. Yeah, it expands. Tony, this is helping you. Fantastic. Shirley says, give us the good news. I always do. You know I'm not going to leave you hanging, Shirley. Yeah, good, Tara. This is perfect timing for you. So as we start to turn our focus, let me back up because that's not what I wanted to just say. Sometimes what happens is we look for this, we can't find anything. So let's take a specific example. Hey, Carlos here, and Carlos actually going to join us next week with our brother Yurish Hooker. We are going to have the coolest conversation, so please don't miss next week, Wellness Wednesday. But if we can't find in that specific situation, if we can't find, okay, here's my one little thing that is within my circle of influence in that specific situation, guess what? It also works to just find anything within your circle of influence. So, for example, world news, circle of concern. There's really almost nothing that I could probably do with what is happening across on the other side of the planet. So for me to find my circle of influence, sure, maybe there's like some type of charity that I can invest in or something that I can do to lobby for something. But let's say there's nothing that I can foresee that would specifically gain traction in my circle of influence in that specific situation. What I can do is say, okay, since there's not a specific piece within this situation, what do I still have control over in my life? Oh, you know what? I can go out and I can clean my kitchen. Oh, I do have the ability to sit down and, enjoy time with my family. Circle of influence. And each time we anytime we invest in here, it shrinks this automatically. We don't have to focus so much on trying to get rid of it. I'm just checking in on a couple comments here. I'm just checking on yours. Too harsh on myself for being good at what I'm working on. Yes, there we go. I was talking about that, and how many of you out there are with him, that you can be pretty hard on yourself and kind of judge and, kind of that self-talk and everything. How many of you out there can do that too? Because I know that I have had my moments with you, my friend. So for you, once again, come here, get into there. Because telling yourself all these stories and all of these things that you're not good enough, blah, 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 that's not influence. That's not influencing your life. That's creating more concern. So start to find those moments in the day. What's that one thing that I do actually feel like I have control over? And maybe it's not the stories in your head right now. Maybe it's just being present with your client. Maybe that's the one thing that you have the circle of influence in right now, is just being present with that one client sitting in your chair. Put your focus there in that moment, because I promise you that helps you to grow that circle of influence, and it's going to help to expand you. And then you're going to have more presence to be able to quiet those little self chatters. And we definitely, we have other Wellness Wednesdays for that specific topic. Yeah, I love that. Shirley says, do the small things that you have control over. Make the changes you can make, and it causes ripples outward. Carlo, who was it? Was it, oh my gosh, you always tell the story about the ripple in the pond. I always forget who that story is from. Type that into the chat. But yeah, I mean, that little tiny stone can make the ripples in the pond, right? So absolutely. Good. So I just want you to take notice that other people in here, they can totally relate. I don't want you to feel alone in that space that like we beat ourselves up and that negative self-talk. So here's the thing. Yeah, Lorraine, we're always harder on ourselves for sure. We know that if we put more attention here, that it's going to expand and it's going to help us lessen this circle, right? Carlo, we'll talk about it next week. Give me a little more. What are you talking about? So just strike that whole comment, right? It can be really challenging to catch ourselves, right? Because in the moment, another law of the mind, 90+% of your day is fully subconscious. So there's only a little space. There's only like 10% of your day that you're even conscious of exactly what your thoughts are. Kind of wild, right? Yeah, maybe 10% at most. So it can be really challenging to know if we are here or here, because most of our day, we're not consciously deciding what our thoughts are. That's big, right? So how do we start to become more conscious of it? Well, first thing is to start to set an intention to be more conscious of where you are in your day, and starting to set reminders. This could be little reminders in your phone. It could be, I used to put Post-it notes on things. I used to even put like a rubber band around my wrist or something, like something that wasn't something common that's always there, so it draws my attention. And each time I saw the rubber band, or each time I saw the Post-it note on my station at work, or each time that little ding happens on my phone, it was that moment that said, "Oh yeah, remember, one of your things that you want to do is be more conscious of if you're in that circle of influence or circle of concern." Don't worry. At that point, you don't have to change anything. Just the consciousness of it starts to make the change. So first step, don't even try to change anything yet. Just start to become more conscious of it and set yourself some type of reminder that's going to bring your consciousness towards it. Also, during that time where you're starting to become more conscious of it, keep a journal. And I brought this up on, I'm doing this 12-week wellness program for my friend Mackenzie's extension company called Invisible Beat Extensions. And we were talking about journaling. And to me, because it's such a normal thing, I don't personally think of journaling as kind of like this historical record. I think of journaling as an activity that I do to get things off of my mind and to understand my thoughts. So journaling for me isn't necessarily this thing that I even go back and ever read again. It's more of a practice in the moment of getting stuff out and clarification and exploration. So just keeping something that you can connect to. And so you can say throughout the day, "Oh yeah, okay, throughout today, I was way more conscious of this. I started to notice that my mind goes to these specific things." It does tend to get drawn, Tara, to those couple people that kind of tend to drive me bonkers in the salon. I do spend a lot of time thinking about that. And again, no need to even change anything yet. Just become conscious and aware without judgment. No judgment right now, right? And then just checking with our comments. Yes. All right, good. You're with me here. Oh, that's cool. Shirley's saying, "Explored a bit of my influence today with a potential new client who was hard on herself, felt ugly, and my intention was to make certain she left smiling," and she did. Oh, yes, that is a huge circle of influence. Very cool. Good. Clarity's coming. All right. So first, awareness. Start to journal a little bit. Like, it doesn't have to be anything fancy. Oh, good, Lorraine. I'm glad you needed to hear this. Nothing fancy. Then, once you start to notice that you are starting to become aware, now you can take the step to redirect. My friend Carlo, who, like I said, join us next week, he always says, stop that thought. And if that works for you, if it's, great for you to just like snap in and kind of do that pattern interrupt, fantastic. Use something like that. For me, it's easy enough to just notice in the moment, oh, where am I? Yeah, I'm totally concerned about this thing that is outside of my control. And in that moment, I can say, okay, what is within my control right now? What can I do? What can I bring my focus to right here in this space, in this moment? That is something I actually have influence over. So I can very easily make that switch into, okay, what's my circle of influence? each time you do that, what I want you to do is anchor that. Don't let it pass you by, because what you're doing is you're shifting your neurology. You anchor it. If you make the switch, great, that's awesome. You can actually make that 10 times more impactful by staying in that moment and saying, man, Andrew, good job. You just made that switch in that moment. And I'm going to sit here and I'm going to bask in the glow of, yeah, that feels good. Like, that feels so good to shift my thought pattern and start to focus on what my influence actually is in this world. So don't skip the opportunity to celebrate it. Yeah, that's right, Carlo. It's your go-to is cancel that thought. I love that. Not stop, but cancel that thought. Yes, yes. Yeah, Tony, be your own cheerleader, my friend. So, celebrate that feeling. Each time you do that, it creates these beautiful new pathways and these beautiful new focuses within the mind that wouldn't necessarily have the same impact if you just kind of go through the process. So make sure you give yourself that time. Now, third step, continue doing that. Continue doing the observation. Continue to journal it out. Continue to set those anchor points. The last step is start to observe when it starts to become natural, and also celebrate that, because this is where it starts to get really good. And this is where you really start to build these beautiful new pathways, is when you start to notice, like, oh my gosh, I actually just went through that day and I didn't really give those people that drive me nuts, I honestly didn't even give them 5 minutes of my day. This is getting more natural now. Ooh, yeah, like this. And celebrate that stuff, my friends, because that's really where we start to anchor it in. Katie says, I say that I shouldn't let those thoughts dock at my harbor. Woo! Yeah, like that one too. Yes, yes. All right. So, yes, Lorraine, becoming mindful. That is so, so important. Yes, Michael, we will. We'll take notice of that and we will connect with you for sure. Let them float on by, Katie. They don't have any space at this harbor. Absolutely. So hopefully you're starting to get the big, beautiful picture that if we spend too much time here, it starts to shrink. But the beautiful news is it works in the opposite direction almost more powerfully than it does in this direction. So the more we put our attention and focus into what we actually have control over, it just expands itself. Because in my coaching, very often, the question is, how do I stop focusing on this? How do I stop doing this? How do I stop doing that? The answer is you don't necessarily have to stop. What you need to do is do something else. Because by doing something else, that puts the stop in. You don't have to even worry about creating the stop if you worry about what you can expand. Because the more you expand, there's no space for it anymore. And that does shift and it does change. Yes, Miss Hall, thank you for saying that, my friend. Give yourself praise. Don't be too hard on yourselves. Yeah, Tony, we are the cheerleaders, right? We're out here cheerleading for all of you. Yeah, awesome. So if you have any questions on what we covered today, you can definitely reach out to me. Let me get my banner back up here so you know how to connect with me. So you can definitely connect with me on social. Andrew.Carruthers on Instagram, Andrew Carruthers on Facebook. You can message me through there. You can also go to my coaching website, which is thejourneyistlife.com. You can see that down there. I do have open spots within my coaching clientele. I just have had a few of my coaching clients that started with me in the beginning of the year wrap up their contracts. And so I do have some spaces in my coaching clientele, and I do free exploration exercises with people where we just get together and make sure the coaching is even the right thing for what you're looking for. So you're always welcome to reach out to me for that. But like I said, even if you're not looking for actual coaching, please feel free to reach out, ask questions, share with me some of your victories, because one of the other great ways to celebrate your wins is to celebrate them with other people. I am always here for that. So